Captain John Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. His crew moved around him, checking systems and monitoring equipment. They were on a routine mission to the edge of the solar system, nothing they hadn't done a dozen times before. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Communications Officer Diane Wells. She frowned at her screen, tapping commands to refine the signal. "It's an energy signature I've never seen before." Miller walked over to her station. "Location: about 50,000 kilometers off our starboard side." "But sir, there's nothing there." Miller turned to his science officer. "Gary, what do we have on sensors?" Gary Nichols shook his head, his eyes never leaving his display. "Nothing visible, but the energy readings are off the charts. It's like space is folding somehow." The bridge fell silent as everyone watched the empty region of space. Then it happened. A shimmer, like heat rising from hot pavement, followed by a tear in the very fabric of reality. Through this impossible opening emerged the largest ship any of them had ever seen. "My God," breathed Miller. The alien vessel was at least 20 times the size of the Endeavour, shaped like a massive arrowhead with glowing blue lines running along its hull. "We're being hailed," said Wells, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Miller straightened his uniform. On screen, the main display flickered, and a figure appeared. It looked almost human, but with gray-blue skin, large eyes with vertical pupils, and no visible hair. The alien wore an ornate uniform covered in what looked like military decorations. "I am Admiral Zorthol of the Axiom Dominion's Imperial Fleet," the alien said in perfect English. "Your planetary system is now being incorporated into our galactic empire." Miller blinked. "How are you speaking our language?" The alien made a dismissive gesture. "Universal translators are basic technology. This further confirms our assessment of your primitive development stage." He straightened. "I am authorized to accept your immediate surrender. Earth will be classified as a Category 3 world, which is quite generous given your limited technological advancement." "Category 3? Miller asked, buying time as his crew frantically recorded and analyzed everything about the alien ship. "You will provide resources and labor to the Dominion. In exchange, you receive our protection and limited access to some of our lesser technologies. Your military assets will be surrendered, and you will accept our occupation forces. This is standard procedure." Miller noticed his science officer silently signaling that they were gathering valuable data from the open communication channel. He needed to keep the alien talking. "And if we decline your generous offer?" Admiral Zorthol looked genuinely surprised. "Decline? That is not an option presented to Category 3 worlds. Perhaps I'm not being clear. This is not a negotiation. The Axiom Dominion spans thousands of star systems. Your world is being notified of its new status as a courtesy." Miller glanced at his crew. They had been trained for first contact scenarios, but nothing like this. He saw determination in their eyes, not fear. He turned back to the screen and did something that would later be remembered as the defining moment of humanity's entrance to galactic politics. He shrugged. "Yeah, that's not going to work for us. Maybe try again with something that doesn't sound like third-rate colonialism." The alien's face contorted in what Miller assumed was shock or anger. You dare to dismiss the Dominion's authority. Do you understand what you're facing?" Miller leaned forward slightly. "Do you? We humans have a long history of telling empires to get lost. It rarely goes well for the empire. You will regret this insolence." Zorthol sputtered. "Probably not," Miller replied calmly. "But here's a counteroffer. How about we meet as equals and discuss actual diplomatic relations? No categories, no surrendering, just two civilizations getting to know each other." The communication ended abruptly as the alien cut the connection. Miller turned to his crew. "Well, that went well. Send everything we've got to Earth Command. I think the welcome party is just getting started." As the Endeavour turned back toward Earth, none of them could know they had just changed the course of human history, and perhaps galactic history as well. News of the alien encounter spread across Earth faster than any virus. World leaders scrambled to form a response team as videos of Captain Miller's exchange with Admiral Zor Fall played on every screen worldwide. Some people panicked, but most felt an unexpected pride in Miller's defiant stance. 3 days later, the Axiom Dominion sent a much larger ship directly to Earth orbit. This time, they demanded a formal meeting with Earth's leaders. Dr. Samantha Wright adjusted her glasses as she studied the alien representatives entering the United Nations Emergency Chamber. As Earth's top linguist and negotiation expert, she had been quickly appointed to lead the human diplomatic team. Behind her calm expression, her mind was analyzing every movement and gesture the aliens made. Ambassador Lurvanth, flanked by 6 guards in metallic armor, carried himself with obvious superiority. His elaborate uniform sparkled with what appeared to be living gems that changed color with his movements. "We have reviewed your planetary communications," Lurvanth began without any greeting. "Your Captain Miller's disrespect has been noted. However, the Imperial Council has graciously decided to provide your species one final opportunity to accept Dominion protection." Samantha smiled politely. "Thank you for coming all this way, Ambassador. We appreciate the opportunity to establish peaceful relations between our civilizations." The alien placed an ornate metal cylinder on the table. It projected a complex holographic document filled with alien text that shifted into English before their eyes. "These are the terms of your incorporation. They are non-negotiable. You have 24 hours to sign before we implement standard pacification protocols." Samantha picked up the document tablet and studied it carefully while the room remained silent. The terms were worse than they had expected. Earth would essentially become a mining colony with humans serving as labor for Dominion projects. All military forces would be disbanded. Any resistance would be met with planetary correction measures. After several minutes, Samantha set the tablet down and slid it back across the table. "Our analysis indicates your empire is massively overextended." Lurvanth's eyes widened slightly. "Excuse me. You don't have the resources to occupy a pebble in our asteroid belt, let alone Earth." She tapped her tablet, and screens around the room lit up with detailed diagrams of the Dominion ship in orbit. "Your primary vessel has significant structural weaknesses here, and here. Your shield modulation is predictable. And your weapons, while impressive, require a 20-second recharge cycle that leaves you vulnerable." The alien delegation shifted uncomfortably as Samantha continued. "We've identified at least 3 extinct civilizations in your protected territories based on the cultural artifacts your crew is wearing. That suggests your protection has some serious flaws." "This is outrageous." Lurvanth stood up, his skin flushing a deep purple. "How dare you analyze our vessels? That alone is an act of aggression." Samantha remained seated. Learning about new visitors is hardly aggressive. Threatening planetary pacification, however, definitely is. She opened a folder and removed a single piece of paper. "Earth proposes an alternative, a Category 5 non-aggression treaty." "There is no such category in Dominion law," Lurvanth sputtered. "There is now," Samantha replied. "It's quite simple. You leave us alone, we leave you alone. Any attempt to force Earth's compliance will be met with proportional response. You can't possibly believe you could resist the Dominion military." Samantha shrugged in a gesture reminiscent of Captain Miller's. "We've spent most of our history fighting each other. Now we finally have someone else to focus on. Trust me, you don't want to be that someone." The ambassador gathered his documents with shaking hands. "The Imperial Council will not recognize this insult. We will return with proper educational measures." As the aliens stormed out, one of the human delegates whispered to Samantha, "Did we just declare war on a galactic empire?" She watched the aliens leave. "No. We just told them we're not interested in their protection racket. Let's see how they respond to customers who refuse to pay." The Axiom Dominion was not used to being refused. After the diplomatic disaster, they changed tactics. If humans would not accept their rightful place through negotiation, The Empire would need to gather more information before deciding how to proceed with this unusual species. Science Director Krulliksen arrived on Earth with a team of 12 specialists. They were granted permission to observe human civilization under strict supervision. The Dominion expected to find primitive beings barely worth the effort to subjugate. Krulliksen was tall and thin with pale blue skin that seemed almost translucent. His large eyes constantly recorded everything they saw, storing information directly into the neural network he shared with his team. Lieutenant Paul Rogers was assigned as their military escort, a young engineer with an easy smile and relaxed manner. He seemed an odd choice to represent Earth's defense forces. This further convinced Krulliksen that humans were not taking the situation seriously. "This facility develops your communication technology?" Krulliksen asked as they entered a research building in Colorado. Rogers nodded, unwrapping a sandwich he brought along. "Among other things, we've been making some improvements based on the scans we took of your ships." The alien scientist stopped walking. "Improvements to our technology." Rogers took a bite of his sandwich and gestured for them to follow him into a lab. Inside, several engineers were working on what appeared to be a partially disassembled version of a Dominion communications array. "This is impossible," whispered one of Krulliksen's team. "They've replicated our quantum relay system." "Not exactly," Rogers said through a mouthful of food. "Your system uses an 8-dimensional folding method to achieve instant communication across light years. It's impressive, but the power requirements are massive. We've modified it to work with just 6 dimensions. It's 30% more efficient now." Krulliksen stared at the human. "You reverse-engineered our most advanced communication system in less than 2 weeks." Rogers shrugged. "We had good scans. Plus, the basic principles aren't that different from some theoretical work our scientists were already exploring. But this technology took the Dominion 3 centuries to perfect." "Yeah, well, we tend to move pretty fast when we're motivated," Rogers said, finishing his sandwich. "You folks showing up with your join-or-die approach was pretty motivating." Throughout the next week, the assessment team witnessed more disturbing examples of human adaptability. They watched in horror as humans engaged in recreational activities the Dominion considered suicidal: cliff diving, spicy food eating contests, and something called parkour that seemed designed to cause injury. "Why do your people willingly consume substances that cause pain?" Krulliksen asked after witnessing a hot sauce competition. "For fun," Rogers replied simply. On the final day of their visit, Krulliksen requested a meeting with human military leaders. "Your species is highly unusual," he began formally. "The speed at which you adapt and your apparent disregard for personal safety makes standard control protocols ineffective." General Susan Hayes smiled. "Is that your way of saying we're unpredictable?" "It is our way of saying you are dangerous," Krulliksen replied. "The Dominion categorizes species based on their predictability and compliance. You fit no existing category." Rogers, who was present as an observer, laughed. "That sounds like a you problem, not an us problem." Krulliksen turned to him. "Our assessment team has concluded that direct military action against Earth would be inefficient." "You mean costly," General Hayes corrected. "Indeed." The alien scientist gathered his notes. "We've spent most of our existence creating order from chaos. Your species seems to thrive in chaos. This requires further study." As the Dominion team prepared to leave Earth, Rogers approached Krulliksen. "Just out of curiosity, what will you tell your leaders?" The alien considered the question carefully. "That conquering Earth would be like trying to colonize a supernova. Technically possible, but not worth the resources it would consume." Rogers grinned. "That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said about us." The reports from Science Director Krulliksen threw the Imperial Council into chaos. Some members demanded immediate military action to put the humans in their place. Others suggested a full quarantine of the Earth system. After much debate, they decided to allow one final diplomatic meeting. Earth responded by forming the Interstellar Relations Committee. They chose Ambassador Kevin Jong to lead it. He was known for solving difficult problems with unexpected approaches. The grand meeting hall of the Dominion flagship glittered with precious metals and gems. 24 high-ranking Dominion officials sat around a massive table made from a material that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal while remaining solid. Ambassador Jong walked in wearing a simple blue suit. He carried only a small tablet. The contrast between his plain appearance and the ornate surroundings was striking. Ambassador Jong, the Imperial Council has reviewed all reports regarding Earth, began Grand Minister Velcor. We remain willing to offer Earth special status within the Dominion, with fewer restrictions than standard Category 3 worlds. Zhang smiled politely. Thank you for that generous offer. However, Earth has a counter-proposal. The Grand Minister nodded, expecting humans to ask for trade rights or technology sharing. You may present it. Zhang tapped his tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the table. Earth will consent to join the Dominion, but only as administrators who will help restructure the obviously failing bureaucracy of your outdated empire. Stunned silence filled the room. Then several council members began shouting at once. This is an outrage. How dare they? Primitive species offering to administer us. The Grand Minister raised his hand for silence. Explain yourself, human. Zhang's display changed to show various charts and graphs. Our analysis of Dominion structure reveals critical inefficiencies. Your empire expands through conquest rather than cooperation, creating unsustainable administrative burdens. He pointed to a particularly complex diagram. Your resource distribution system wastes approximately 40% of collected materials in transit and corruption. Your centralized command structure creates information bottlenecks. And you believe humans could do better? Asked the council member with obvious scorn. We know we can, Zhang replied calmly. Earth has experimented with nearly every form of government imaginable throughout our history. We've learned what works and what doesn't through centuries of trial and error. He swiped to a new image showing the Dominion's territory, with various sections highlighted in red. These regions show signs of imminent rebellion. These others have resource depletion that your central planning has failed to address. Your empire will begin significant collapse within 20 years without fundamental reforms. The council members looked at each other in shock. Many of these issues were classified secrets, yet somehow the humans had identified them in weeks. This is absurd, the Grand Minister finally said. The Dominion has stood for 12 centuries. We will not be lectured by a species that has barely mastered space travel. Zhang nodded. Understandable. Change is difficult. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small book. He placed it on the table. This is a human management book titled Failing Upward: How Not to Run an Interstellar Empire. We wrote it specifically for the Dominion. It might be helpful when you're ready to address your structural issues. The Grand Minister's skin darkened with anger. This meeting is concluded. The Dominion will now consider more direct approaches to the Earth problem. As Zhang was escorted out, a junior council member whispered to him, "Were you actually serious about helping restructure the Dominion?" Zhang smiled. "Absolutely. Someone needs to. You've built a house of cards across thousands of star systems. It would be a shame to see it all come crashing down." The Dominion representatives watched the human leave with a mixture of outrage, and though none would admit it, a trace of unease. Perhaps there was more to these humans than they had realized. The Dominion had never faced such disrespect in its 12 centuries of existence. After Ambassador Zhang's insulting presentation, the Imperial High Command decided to make an example of Earth. They would demonstrate the consequences of defying the greatest power in the galaxy. A disciplinary fleet of 30 warships emerged from Fold Space near Mars. Their orders were simple: disable Earth's defense systems, destroy a few major cities, and force an unconditional surrender. Commander Lisa Freeman stood in Earth's orbital defense center, watching the incoming Dominion vessels on the main display. At 42, she had spent her entire career preparing for threats that most people thought would never come. Now that the threat was here, she felt strangely calm. "All fighter squadrons report ready, Commander," said her operations officer. Freeman nodded. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We just need to convince them that we're more trouble than we're worth." The Earth response consisted of hundreds of small fighter craft that seemed primitive compared to the massive Dominion warships. From his command deck, General Vrax of the Dominion watched the approaching human vessels with amusement. "Look at these tiny ships," he said to his bridge crew. "They still used physical pilots instead of neural links. This will be over quickly." He gave the order to begin the attack. Dominion warships fired energy beams that could cut through mountains. Most of the human fighters easily dodged these attacks, moving in ways that seemed impossible. "How are they evading our targeting systems?" Vrax demanded. His tactical officer looked confused. "They're using some kind of gravity manipulation that our systems can't predict." On her command ship, Freeman watched the battle unfold. Earth scientists had studied the scans of Dominion technology and made a critical discovery. The aliens used artificial gravity fields for everything from life support to weapons targeting. With some creative engineering, humans had developed what Freeman called gravity slingshots, devices that could briefly distort the Dominion's own gravity fields. The human fighters darted between the large Dominion ships, attaching small devices to their hulls. These devices didn't damage the warships directly. Instead, they created localized gravity distortions that pulled the massive vessels off course. Soon, Dominion ships were colliding with each other as their navigation systems failed. Their energy weapons fired wildly into space, missing the nimble human fighters. "What is happening?" General Vrax shouted as his flagship tilted sharply to one side. Warning alarms blared across the bridge. On her display, Freeman watched as the Dominion fleet fell into disarray. "Phase 2, she ordered. Human fighters pulled back and formed a grid pattern around the confused alien fleet. They activated their gravity devices simultaneously, creating a complex gravity web that effectively immobilized the Dominion vessels. Freeman opened a communication channel. "General Vrax, this is Commander Freeman of Earth Defense. Your fleet is currently trapped in our gravity net. We could keep you here indefinitely or collapse the net, which would crush your ships. I suggest we talk." Vrax's face appeared on her screen, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief. "How have you mastered such technology so quickly?" "This is impossible." Freeman allowed herself a small smile. "We've been training for this since the Wright brothers first flew. Your pilots might have centuries of experience, but ours have imagination. You will pay for this humiliation," Vrax growled. "Actually, no one needs to pay for anything," Freeman replied. "You can leave peacefully, and we can avoid further unpleasantness. Or you can stay, and we'll continue this demonstration of human ingenuity. Your choice." After a long silence, Vrax spoke again. "Release our vessels. We will withdraw." As the Dominion fleet limped back through fold space, Freeman received a message from Earth Command. "The Dominion will be back. They can't afford to let this defeat stand." Freeman looked out at the stars. "Next time, we'll be even more ready." After their military failure, the Dominion leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. They had never encountered a species like humans before. Direct force had failed. Diplomatic threats had failed. They needed a new approach. "We will use cultural infiltration," declared Minister of Integration Tevlar. "This method has worked on 12 other resistant species. We send cultural representatives to spread Dominion values. Over time, humans will see the benefits of our ways and turn against their own leaders." Within weeks, hundreds of Dominion cultural attaches arrived on Earth. They established educational centers in major cities, offering to teach humans about the glorious history and traditions of the Axiom Dominion. What the aliens did not expect was how humans would respond to this cultural exchange. Eric Martinez walked through the busy streets of New York City, smiling at the sight of a Dominion cultural center. As the head of Earth's biggest entertainment company, He had immediately recognized an opportunity when the aliens arrived. "They really don't understand humans at all," he said to his assistant as they entered the building. Inside, Dominion representatives in formal attire were showing elaborate holograms of their architecture and art to a small group of interested humans. The aliens' expressions were serious as they explained the deep cultural significance of each image. Martinez approached one of the Dominion officials. "Hi there. I'm Eric Martinez. I was hoping we could discuss a cultural collaboration opportunity." The Dominion cultural officer named Sylvan looked surprised but nodded politely. "What sort of collaboration?" 2 months later, Sylvan stood in horror as he watched humans leaving a theater. They were wearing colorful versions of traditional Dominion formal wear, modified with human fashion elements. From speakers, he could hear what humans called remix versions of sacred Dominion ceremonial music, now with added bass beats and electronic sounds. "What have they done?" he whispered to himself. Martinez appeared beside him, grinning widely. "Isn't it amazing? Your culture is taking off here on Earth. The Dominion Dance Mix album is topping all the charts, and those outfits are selling out everywhere." Sylvan could barely speak. "These are sacred traditions. You've turned them into entertainment." Martinez looked confused. "Isn't that what cultural exchange is all about? We love your stuff. We're just adding our own spin to it." All across Earth, humans were enthusiastically adopting elements of Dominion culture, but not in the way the aliens had intended. Restaurants created fusion dishes combining Earth ingredients with Dominion recipes. Fashion designers incorporated alien patterns into their clothing lines. Comedians performed popular routines mimicking the rigid formality of Dominion officials. Minister Tevlar received increasingly panicked reports from his cultural agents. Instead of humans becoming more like the Dominion, elements of human culture were spreading to Dominion citizens who visited Earth. Some younger Dominion officials were even requesting transfers to Earth postings, fascinated by human creativity. In a final desperate effort, Tevlar himself visited Earth to witness the problem firsthand. Martinez invited him to what was described as a cultural appreciation event. The minister accepted, hoping to address the situation directly. To his horror, the event turned out to be a comedy club. He sat stiffly as human performers made jokes about the Dominion's complex hierarchy and elaborate ceremonies. Worse still, the audience included several junior Dominion officials who were laughing along with the humans. After the show, Martinez found Tevlar sitting alone, looking disturbed. "Why are you doing this?" the minister asked. "We offered to share our superior culture with you." Martinez sat down beside him. "You know what's interesting about humans. Anything we can laugh at loses its power to intimidate us. That's just how we work." Tevlar stared at him. "You're turning our attempt to influence you into entertainment." Martinez nodded cheerfully. "And it's very entertaining. Look, your empire rules through fear and respect, right? But humans have always been really good at not respecting things that try to control us. It's kind of our specialty." As the minister returned to his ship that night, he realized with growing dread that the cultural infiltration strategy had backfired completely. Instead of changing humans, contact with Earth was beginning to change the Dominion. Word of Earth's defiance spread throughout the Dominion like wildfire. For centuries, the Empire had presented itself as unbeatable and all-knowing. Now stories circulated about the small blue planet that had not only refused to submit but had mocked their mighty empire. Species that had lived under Dominion control for generations began to whisper among themselves. If humans could stand up to the Empire, perhaps others could too. Dr. Nickel Ford walked through the corridors of the United Nations Interstellar Relations Building in Geneva. As head of Earth's new Department for Interspecies Relations, she had been surprised by the sudden influx of secret messages from various planets within the Dominion. "We have another request for contact," her assistant said, handing her a secure tablet. "This one is from the Lentari system. They've been under Dominion control for over 400 years. Nicole nodded. "Same as the others." "Yes, They want to know how we're resisting. For the past month, representatives from a dozen different species had reached out to Earth. Some were open rebels, fighting against Dominion rule from hidden bases. Others were still officially loyal, but questioning their place in the Empire. Nicole entered a secure conference room where representatives from 3 alien species waited. They looked nothing like humans or each other. One had 4 arms and scales. Another was insect-like, and the third appeared almost plant-like. But they all shared the same hopeful expression. "Thank you for meeting with us, Dr. Ford," said the scaled alien named Kraz. "Our worlds have heard much about Earth. Is it true you defeated a Dominion battle fleet with small fighter craft?" Nicole smiled. "Our defense forces were successful, yes. But we didn't destroy their ships. We simply showed them that conquering Earth would be too costly. And your diplomats actually suggested the Dominion needed human leadership," asked Zem, the insect-like alien, with something like awe in her voice. "We made it clear that their empire is inefficient and likely to collapse," Nicole explained. "Whether they accept our help is their choice." The plant-like being named Fodor leaned forward. "The Dominion claims you are dangerous rebels who must be isolated before your ideas spread. They are right to fear you. Already, 3 systems have declared independence, citing Earth's example." Nicole looked surprised. "We didn't tell anyone to rebel. That wasn't our intention." "But you showed it was possible to say no," Kraz said. "For many of us, that was something we have forgotten." Later that day, Nicole met with Earth's Security Council. The Dominion had sent an official message accusing Earth of fomenting rebellion throughout their territory. "They want us to issue a statement condemning the rebellions," Nicole explained the assembled leaders. "They're threatening severe consequences if we refuse." Council head Alan Bradley frowned. "Have we actually been encouraging rebellion?" Nicole shook her head. "Not directly. But we've been sharing information with anyone who asks." She displayed a list on the main screen. Historical documents about Earth's own revolutions and independence movements. Copies of human rights declarations. Basic democratic principles. "Knowledge is a weapon in a society built on controlled information," said one of the council members. Nicole nodded. "I told the Dominion representatives that we didn't start anything. We just showed them what's possible when you stand up to bullies. The rest is their own choice." Reports continued to arrive from across Dominion space. More planets were questioning their allegiance to the Empire. Some demanded more rights while remaining part of the Dominion. Others sought complete independence. The entire galactic power structure was shifting, and at the center of this change was Earth, a planet that the Dominion had initially dismissed as primitive and insignificant. In response to growing unrest, the Dominion deployed military forces to key systems, but they faced a problem they had never encountered before. Their own citizens were no longer afraid. The Empire had always maintained control through fear and tradition. Now both were crumbling, system by system. Earth watched and waited, knowing that the Dominion's next move would determine the future of not just humanity, but countless other species across the galaxy.